Krishna Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Muspat Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Sattva Smadhati Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Bhagavad Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktamani Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Mokh Bhagnath Sam Khund Radha Khund Giri Gojan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Guru Dwarka Dham Ki Jai Swami Bhaktivinda Ki Jai All glories to the Assembly Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Muspat Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Sattva Smadhati Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Bhagavad Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktamani Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Mokh Bhagnath Sam Khund Radha Khund Giri Gojan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Guru Dwarka Dham Ki Jai Swami Bhaktivinda Ki Jai All glories to the Assembly All glories to the Assembly Thank you very much.
All glories to you, Srila Prabhupada. Glories to you, Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Buddha, humble obeisances. Hare Krishna, nice to see you. How are you doing?
Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Thank you
Yeah, nice to see you.
so
Also,
much for inviting me again.
okay.
I'm very honored to be in your association. So I see Sahadev. I'm starting to remember Bhakta George because I always see his name. Very
Yes.
nice to see his face. And Lokadevi also joins very often. I remember Lokadevi and Vishakhadasi. And yeah, I think that is everyone on the call for now. So yeah, thank you very much
Coming in. So
for
I'll
having
put,
me.
so I'll put the verse on the screen so we can start.
Thank you. All right, so I'll just start with some invocation prayers, if that's all right. And then we'll
Yes.
get to the verse. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrita Naram Chavaya Noratam Devim Sarasvatim Vasyam Tato Javam Uduriyate Nashta Preyusu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jnana Shalakaya Chakshuranmalitanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Right, so we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We're in the first canto and we're in chapter number 9, verse number 20. So it's almost in the middle of the chapter, and this chapter is about Bhishma Dev and his passing away in the presence of Lord Krishna. So the name of the chapter is The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev in the Presence of Lord Krishna. I almost remembered the title, right? And at this point in time, the Pandavas have come to offer their respects to Bhishma Dev on his deathbed, which is a bed of arrows. And they've come to hear from Bhishma Dev. So Bhishma Dev is speaking this verse. And I'm just going to quickly open it up on my computer so I can see it a bit bigger. And he is, at this point in time, he is speaking about Krishna and how the Pandavas have related to Krishna. All right. Yam manashe matuleyam priyam mitram uttam sahuridat ata saratim. So, is there anyone else who'd like to chant the verse? Maybe give us the more correct pronunciation of the verse. That would be wonderful.
Okay. Yam ayese mutele yam priyamitram sure tanmam akoro sachivam dutam suridad atasaratim. Sorry, Prabhu, want to try? Sadev Prabhu, you want to try?
You're on mute, Sadev Prabhu.
Yeah, it's muted. Nobody's chanting, just go on, please.
All right, so we'll go for the word for word. Yam, the person. Manyase, you think. Matuleyam. Sorry, the verse kind of disappeared a bit from the screen. Okay, it's back. Thank you. Maternal cousins. Priyam, very dear. Mitram, friend. Surita, mum, ardent well-wisher. Akoro, executed. Savicham, counsel. Dutam, messenger. Soridat, by goodwill, Ata, thereupon, Saratim, charioteer. Translation, O king, that personality whom out of ignorance only you thought to be your maternal cousins, your very dear friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Purport. Lord Shri Krishna, although acting as the cousin, brother, friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc. of the Pandavas, was still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Out of his causeless mercy and favor upon his unalloyed devotees, he performed all kinds of service, but that does not mean that he has changed his position as the absolute person. To think of him as an ordinary man is the grossest type of ignorance. So quite a short, a short purport. So now we'll go into a hopefully inspiring discussion. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jana Jana Salakaya Chakshuram Militanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shirupam Shishitanyam Anambistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadam Padatankam Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyata Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupa Sagaratam Sahakana Rukavatam Sajivam Sadvaita Savadutam Parijam Satam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Samgana Lalita Shra Shri Vishaka Vistamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste.
Coming back. Network disconnection. Yeah, she's back.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, dear devotees. I just got kicked off the meeting for a second. Welcome, Radhikun, Devidasi. Thank you so much for joining us this evening as well. I'm just going to quickly get back. So we were in the middle of Shri Krishna Pranasandhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishubhana Stiti Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Triyubhikshta Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patinam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadada Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All right. So the devotees, I have to confess, I was looking at this purport for a long time, praying for inspiration to know what to speak upon, because the purport is quite short. So when I read the purport, for me, there seemed to be three main points that Prabhupada was making or elucidating. And the first point being that Krishna takes in this very interesting role, or Prabhupada says he acts. So Krishna acts as the cousin, he acts as the brother, he acts as the friend and the well-wisher, the counselor, the messenger, and the benefactor, and many more roles for the Pandavas. But despite the fact that he does so, he always remains the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But I think the fact that he takes on those roles, that in itself is quite fascinating, because as far as I know, it's only in Vaishnavism where we have this idea that, God comes to earth, God comes to us, and then he willingly, takes on many roles for the goal or the purpose to interact with us in more intimate ways. So I found that is it's actually quite a profound meditation. And then the second point that Prabhupada makes is that Krishna does so, but it's because out of his mercy, and it's because he's actually doing a favor for whom? For his unalloyed devotees. So it's not for any devotee, but for his unalloyed devotees, Krishna is willing to play so many different roles, and he actually serves them. But then Prabhupada makes the point that the fact that he does so doesn't change his position as the absolute person. And we shouldn't, hear all these stories about Krishna and then think, well, maybe he was just a great historic person. But we should think that despite the fact that he's God, for some reason, he is willing to take this position. So what I thought would be interesting to meditate upon is Krishna's relationship with the Pandavas, especially his friendship with Arjuna, because that is one of the roles that is highlighted in this verse, that he takes the role as a friend. So I thought it would be meaningful for us to meditate upon that. And then I also wanted us to meditate upon, why does Krishna take on these different roles for his unalloyed devotee? Why does Krishna decide? Why does God decide to serve his devotees? Because religious people are all striving to serve him. And if you're a religious person, you won't say you won't make the claim that your goal is to get God to serve you. Hopefully not. You'll say that your goal is to worship and to serve God. So what inspires Krishna to serve his pure devotee? And then lastly, I thought we could also meditate upon how should that, this phenomena that Krishna serves his pure devotee, how should that influence our understanding of Krishna? So without further ado, let's go to some Mahabharat Katha. So I was doing some research and I found, let's get to my notes quickly, if you bear with me. I found out about an interesting scripture called the Bhagavata Vahini. And there's this conversation between Arjuna's grandson, so that would be Parikshit, who survived, the battle of Kurukshetra because he was in the womb of Uttara. And of course, the Brahmastra weapon was directed towards him, but Krishna protected him. So he's the grandson of Arjuna, and he was having a discussion in this literature with Vyasadeva about the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, because by the time Parikshit was an adult and he was, ruling Bharatvarsha, then I think the Pandavas and Krishna had already departed, so he probably didn't have the opportunity to really witness the exchanges, the intimate exchanges between Krishna and his grandfather Arjuna and the other Pandavas. So Vyasadeva starts and he describes, what Krishna is like, and this is what he said: all the gods bowed before him with folded hands. Sometimes he would raise his bhaktas to the skies. Very soon he will drag them down into the depths. He treated the world as a puppet show. He was always radiant with his smile. He never knew anxiety, disappointment, or distress. He behaved sometimes like a common man, sometimes as an innocent child, and other times a near kinsman, or as an intimate friend, or as a masterful monarch. Sometimes he behaved as a playful coward boy. He had the capacity and the cleverness to play all the roles with unique distinction. So we see this is a unique quality of Krishna, that he comes to the world and he's like an actor. And, whatever the situation requires, he can take on a specific role to have the exchanges that he wants with his pure devotees. So Krishna was, for the Pandavas, he was a friend. Now it's interesting that, we've got 5 Pandavas. And we've got the oldest Pandava is Yudhishthir, and Krishna treated Yudhishthir as his superior. And then we've got Bhima and Arjuna, and it's interesting, like Krishna relates to Arjuna almost like an equal, like they are like friends, and the exchanges are very much those of equals. And then you've got the younger brothers, Sadeva Naku, and Krishna used to teach them, treat them like he was their older brother, older cousin. So it's interesting how, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but for the exchange to be sweet and to be appreciated, he was willing to take on these different roles. Of course, we also know that Queen Kunti was considered Krishna's aunt. In this pastime, we call it Nara Lila, because Nara means human, and it's a pastime in which Krishna acts like a human, so a human-like pastime. So whenever Krishna would see Queen Kunti, he would actually offer his obeisances to her. He would, pay dandavats to her feet and touch his head to her feet. Great respect, although she was also Krishna's devotee, as we know, if we have the famous prayers of Queen Kunti in which she glorifies Krishna. But for the exchange, he wanted to treat her and honor her as his aunt. So I'm going to show. So the first pastime where Krishna really meets the Pandavas in a personal capacity. So he knew about the Pandavas, but there was a specific incident where he met them in person for the first time. So this is after Arjuna had won Draupadi. He to their humble home. They were staying with a potter. And so he came back with Draupadi, and there was an interesting incident where Kunti didn't know what Arjuna had won, and she told him that whatever he had won that day, he should share with his brothers. And that is partly the reason why Draupadi was then shared as the wife of all 5 of the brothers. So at that point in time, just after Arjuna had arrived with Draupadi and she had been introduced, and Dharmaraj, that would be Yudhishthira, was describing the great events of the day. Then Krishna and Balaram, dressed in yellow silk, entered the Lodi cottage. They fell at the feet of Queen Kunti, and they said, "Mother, we are your cousins, we are your nephews. We are the children of Nanda and Yashoda. Please accept us." They touched the feet of Yudhishthira Maharaj and paid full dandavats in front of him. Now this is interesting. Now Krishna approached Arjuna. He drew him aside with a sweet and simple expression of affection. And he said, "I know you, but you don't know me. I am seeing you now for the very first time. I am the son of Vyasadeva, and my name is Sri Krishna. I'm younger than you are. Still, when you achieved that victory in the royal palace," referring to the victory where he won Draupadi, "I recognized that you are one of the Pandava brothers, and so I understood that you had escaped from the palace of lac wherein you were in when it was set on fire. From the moment my eyes fell on you at the gathering of suitors there, I somehow felt that you are Arjuna. I told my brother this is so. This is my brother Balaram. I was very happy that I recognized you, and my brother too shared that joy. At last, I'm able to meet you." And then he also says, "This bride is the embodiment of virtue and intelligence." So you can see Krishna is overjoyed meeting Arjuna, because we know that Krishna and Arjuna are eternal friends. They're inseparable. Now, it continues. From that day, the affection between Krishna and Arjuna grew more and more intense. It grew into a huge tree and yielded fruits rich with sweetness, which they shared. In that sweetness, their minds merged and became one. So it says, now Vyasa is speaking to Parikshit, and he said, "Krishna loved Arjuna with special fever. Krishna used to take Arjuna with him wherever he went. Arjuna could move freely, even in the inner apartments of the residence of Krishna. Krishna used to play with Arjuna in the waters of the Yamuna, diving at one place and rising at a distant spot to surprise him, calling on him to do likewise if he could, competing with him in various games which defy description and identification." See, we have this beautiful scene that, Krishna and Arjuna, they're playing basically like children in the Yamuna, just having fun. So you can see it's a very, very intimate relationship that they have. Okay, we continue. All of a sudden, Krishna would take Arjuna to a solitary place and converse with him on some mysteries. He used to often discard the smooth silken bed and sleep with his head on Arjuna's lap instead. So we can see that is a very, very close relationship that they have, so close that Krishna would want to sleep on Arjuna's lap with his head. Arjuna too reciprocated that love in full. Sometimes they were found to be angry against each other, talking as if they were enraged. They made up very soon and resumed friendly conversation quickly. So I'm just going to quickly go back. All right. It can be said that they were Nara and Narayan, like the body and the breath. There was no Arjuna without Krishna, and no Krishna without Arjuna. There was no secret which your grandfather did not share with Krishna, or which Krishna did not share with your grandfather, which particularly... No, that we're going to end there. So that was really, I think, beautiful. I knew about the friendship between Krishna and Arjuna, but I didn't know about them playing in the water together. And I really... So one other pastime that I want to do before the Battle of Kurukshetra, the two parts of the two opposing armies, we've got the Kauravas on the one side, the Pandavas on the other side, and they were asking different, personalities, famous fighters and armies to fight on their side. So Arjuna had the opportunity to ask Krishna, but Duryodhana also wanted, Krishna to fight on their side. So they both decided to approach Krishna very early while he was still sleeping. And then what happened is Arjuna decided to stand at Krishna's feet, and Duryodhana decided to stand at Krishna's head. The moment Krishna opened up his eyes, he first saw Arjuna, because when you open up your eyes, you might look down. And then he asked Arjuna, what benediction can I give you? And Arjuna actually asked that Krishna could fight for him. Although Krishna had said that he would not take up any arms. But still, he chose Krishna because he wanted Krishna just to be present. Duryodhana was overjoyed with Arjuna's decision because he knew Krishna would not fight. And then he could ask Krishna for Krishna's army. So and it was interesting, in that sense, Krishna wasn't showing partiality because he was willing to give a boon even to Duryodhana. So Krishna was going to be on Arjuna's side, but he wasn't going to fight. So then Arjuna asked Krishna if he would be his charioteer. Now, if we go into the details, we see that this is quite like a significant favor to ask Krishna, especially given that we know Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because a charioteer wouldn't be, from the class of fighters. A charioteer would be someone that is skilled, but they would be like from the class of servants. We could say it's the equivalent of a chauffeur. Now, if you're a very wealthy person, you might have your own chauffeur, and they need to be skilled, and you need to trust them, and they need training. But they're definitely not like a higher, in a profession, they're not like a higher class person. They're not a businessman. They're not a CEO. They're a servant. So Arjuna was asking Krishna to be his servant on the battlefield. And Krishna very happily agreed. Now, how it worked on the battlefield is that the person who was driving the chariot, so the charioteer would be standing on a lower level than the fighter he was driving for. And you can imagine on a battlefield, there's a great deal of noise and commotion. So most of the time, the fighter couldn't actually indicate, or communicate with the charioteer by speaking. Also, you were really pressured for time. So they couldn't okay, go left, go right, stop, go. There wasn't really time, for conversations that missed the battle. So how did they communicate? They actually kicked the charioteer. So with your feet, you were indicating to the charioteer where to go. So here we've got the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Firstly, he takes the position of a charioteer. Secondly, on the chariot, he's actually sitting in a lower place than Arjuna. And thirdly, the way Arjuna is communicating with him is by kicking him with his feet. And Krishna not only agreed to this, he very joyfully agreed to this because he saw it as an opportunity to serve Arjuna. He saw it as an opportunity to show his love, his dedication to Arjuna. Now, what becomes even more interesting is at a certain point in the Battle of Kurukshetra, the horses of the chariot of Arjuna became severely winded and they were very exhausted. At that point in time, Krishna, noticed the condition of the horses and he drove the chariot off the battlefield. He created like a little oasis. He got off the chariot and he actually took care of the horses. So Krishna performed the duties of a groom. Krishna took the arrows out of the horses. He dressed their wounds. He made sure they got water. He you can imagine he was like taking down all the gear, rubbing them down. So again, like really, like now even taking the position of not only serving Arjuna, but serving Arjuna's horses, just to express his devotion and his commitment to his devotee. So we can see that Krishna really actually embraces this role as a friend. And as the verse we were reading earlier pointed out, he was also a benefactor, he was also an advisor, he was also a messenger. And each time Krishna plays one of these roles, we see that he really embraces that role. So I wanted to share just one more pastime. So this is actually before the Battle of Kurukshetra took place. And here Krishna is taking the role of a messenger, and it's a specific type of messenger. So he was going to Duryodhana to try and see if he could convince him to, somehow make peace of the Pandavas, find an agreement between the Kauravas and the Pandavas without there needing to be war to resolve their differences about the kingdom of Ishtanipur. So Krishna was, sorry, just getting back to my notes for a moment. So the Pandavas had been exiled. And at the end of this period, when they had been exiled, they returned. And they were happy not to take their entire kingdom back, but they just wanted a part of the kingdom back at least. So they were happy actually for the Kauravas to keep a part of the kingdom. And they just said, well, give us a part so we can rule that part. Duryodhana wasn't wanting to have any of that. He wanted to have war, and he wanted to basically just destroy the Pandavas, and he wanted to be like the exclusive ruler. So Krishna was sent, and it's a nice word that they use for Krishna. He was the Shanti Duta. So Shanti means peace and Duta means messenger. So Krishna actually went all the way to Duryodhana, and he asked him, he made different suggestions. He said, give the Pandavas half the kingdom, and Duryodhana refused. Then he said, okay, just give Duryodhana, just give the Pandavas each a village, because there's 5 Pandavas and they were rulers. So they really needed to have a community which they could take charge of and look after the people. So he said, just give the Pandavas each a village, just 5 villages, and they could rule that. But Duryodhana was so envious, and he had so little like capacity to wish well upon anyone else that he refused, and he said that I will not even give the Pandavas the amount of land which a needle can drive through. So just refusing. Then they got into quite like a heated debate. And needless to say, Krishna wasn't impressed with Duryodhana at all. Duryodhana decided to retaliate, and he wanted to capture Krishna. Now, that is a big mistake. Don't think you can capture God or retaliate against him. So then what happened is Krishna actually revealed part of his universal form. Krishna's universal form, one of the ways it described is that it's time. So time destroys everything, as we know. So within the universal form, you see all destruction. So it was so overwhelming that Duryodhana couldn't bear the sight. He couldn't look at it, and he couldn't, just being in the presence of the universal form was completely overwhelming to him. But what is fascinating is that the devotees that were present in that assembly, they could actually see the universal form and they could appreciate it. And they just saw it as a very magnificent and glorious form of Krishna. So again, that also showing how our relationship with Krishna does influence the way we see them. All right, but let's get back to Krishna, who was acting as the friend of the Pandavas. So this is from a Prabhupada lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is on the 10th canto, chapter 23, verse number 74, and this is a purport. How the sons of Pandu, the Pandavas, enjoy Krishna's association is described as follows. When Shri Krishna arrived in Indraprastha, the capital of the Kurus, Maharaj Yudhishthir immediately came out to smell the flavor of Krishna's head. It is the Vedic custom that superiors smells the head of the subordinates, and when the subordinates offer respect to the superior by touching his feet. Similarly, Arjuna and Bhima embraced Krishna with great jubilation, and the two younger brothers named Nakul and Sahadev touched the lotus feet of Krishna with tears in their eyes and offered their respects. In this way, all five of the Pandava brothers enjoyed the fraternal friendship of Krishna in transcendental mellow. Of the five Pandavas, Arjuna is the most intimately connected of Krishna. He has a nice bow called Gandiva in his hand. His thighs are compared to the trunks of elephants, and his eyes are always reddish. When Krishna and Arjuna are together on a chariot, they become celestial beauties, pleasing to the eyes of everyone. It is said that once Arjuna was lying on his bed with his head upon Krishna's lap and was talking and joking with Krishna in great relaxation, enjoying Krishna's company with smiling and great satisfaction. All right, so we just read one more purport. And this is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse number 65. There is a nice example of the friendship between Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. When the fighting was going on, Ashwatthama, the son of Drona Acharya, according to the prevailing rules of chivalry, one's charioteer driver should never be attacked by the enemy. Ashwatthama behaved heinously in so many ways that he did not hesitate to attack Krishna's body, although Krishna was acting only as a charioteer for Arjuna. When Arjuna saw that Ashwatthama was releasing various kinds of arrows to hurt Krishna, he immediately stood in front of Krishna to intercept all of them. At that time, although Arjuna was being harmed by those arrows, he felt an ecstatic love for Krishna, and the arrows appeared to him like showers of flowers. Another instance of Arjuna's friendship with Krishna was described by Narada, who reminded Krishna, when Arjuna was learning the art of shooting arrows, he could not see you for so many days, but when you arrived there, he immediately stopped all his activities and embraced you. This means that even though Arjuna was engaged in learning about the military art, he had not forgotten Krishna for a moment. As soon as there was an opportunity to see Krishna, Arjuna immediately embraced him. So we can see that this relationship between Krishna and Arjuna is very special. It's a very, very special bond. And Krishna derives great enjoyment from this this special friendship. So now the second question that we wanted to address is, why does the Lord take this position? Why does the Lord decide to become the friend, the messenger, the advisor, the well-wisher of his devotees? Why does he decide to serve his devotees? So this is from Srimad Bhagavatam 6th canto, chapter 16, verse number 34. Chitraketu said, O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to the devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees. So this is a beautiful purport. The Lord and the devotees both conquer. The Lord is conquered by the devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. Because of being conquered by one another, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. The highest perfection of this mutual conquering is exhibited by Krishna and the gopis. Okay, So this is beautiful. No one conquers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the Lord consents to be conquered by his devotees. All right, so we're going to read one more purport. So we see this exchange between Krishna and his devotees. So both the Lord and the devotees are conquered, and it's said that one name for Krishna is Ajit, and that means he's unconquerable. But even the unconquerable becomes conquered through devotion. So through devotion, and devotion is manifested through our loving service to the Lord. All right, so this is a purport from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 6, verse number 84. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the ultimate goal of knowledge, one who is not a pure devotee and is not engaged in the service of the Lord cannot understand him. Lord Brahma therefore confirms this. It's very difficult to understand the Supreme Lord through one's studies. However, it's very easy for the devotees to capture the Lord. The Lord is known as Ajit, unconquerable. No one can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the Lord consents to be conquered by his devotees. Being pleased by devotional activities, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees. That's how the devotees exchange between the devotee and between Krishna. Krishna, when he sees a devotee loves him purely, then he agrees to become the devotee's friend. He agrees to start serving the devotee because he is so touched by that devotee's devotion. So the last purport we'll read is from Prabhupada, a lecture that he gave on Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter. And I think this shows that on the one hand, Krishna is neutral to everyone, because he's God, he can't have like favorites. But at the same time, although he's neutral to everyone in the sense that he's willing to give blessings to everyone, he's willing to accept everyone's service, still those that serve him, they manage to get a special place in his heart. Okay, so Prabhupada says, the Lord says, I am equal to everyone. God is nobody's enemy and nobody's special friend. Just like the king, the government, nobody's enemy, nobody's friend. As you act, so you get result. Similarly, for the common man, there's no special favor from God. But, here is a word, but, it means that there is something special. So this word is used here. What is that? But anyone who's engaged in devotional service of me, so for him, I've got special attention. As he is always constantly engaged in my service, similarly, I am also engaged in his service, says the Lord. Here one passage is quoted by the great commentator Baladev Vidyabhusana, that Bhagavan Bhakta Bhaktiman, just like we become devoted, similarly, God also becomes devoted to us. You don't think that it's one-sided devotion. No, just like love is never one-sided. Love is reciprocation. Similarly, although God is great, he becomes a devotee of a devotee. He takes pleasure in that way. It's clearly stated that I also try to devote myself for his service. As we take pleasure in serving God, similarly, God also takes pleasure by serving the devotee. That is reciprocation. So I think that answered like our second question we were thinking about meditating upon from the verse. And that question was, why does Krishna agree to take on these different roles, as friend and servant and messenger for devotees? And, what inspires him to do so? Now, our last question was, once we know that we have this unique understanding of God, it's a God that is willing to be your friend. It's a God that is willing to even serve you if you're his pure devotee. How should that influence our understanding of Krishna or of God? How should that help us to see him? So we've got one last story we're going to share. And this is a story about Lord Chaitanya and his travels to South India. So from our scripture, we say that Lord Chaitanya is an avatar of Krishna. So it's a form of Krishna that comes to the material world to teach us special lessons. So Lord Chaitanya lived in India and he visited South India, and he visited one very, very big temple in South India. It probably, I'm speaking under correction, but I think it was probably Sri Rangam, where there is like an immensely huge temple. And then outside the temple, he saw a person who was known as a Brahmana, so like a person from the priestly class, but he also knew that this person was illiterate. And what struck him about this illiterate person was that he was sitting on the steps of the temple's entrance and he was reading the Bhagavad Gita. But he was illiterate and he was holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down. So Lord Chaitanya knew that he couldn't really be reading. But what was most striking is that while this person was reading the Bhagavad Gita, he was crying. Tears were just incessantly flowing from his eyes, and he was visibly, deeply moved by something. So Lord Chaitanya approached him and he said, my dear Brahmana, what are you reading? What is moving you so that you've got tears incessantly running down your face? And the Brahmana was often teased for the fact that he was there, he was reading the Bhagavad Gita, although he couldn't really read. But he realized when Lord Chaitanya asked him this question, that this question was very sincere. So he said that, well, my guru instructed me that I should read the Bhagavad Gita every day. So that is what I do. And then Lord Chaitanya said, now I understand, you are just trying to follow the instructions of your Guru Maharaj, and I respect that. But still, why are you crying? Because if you are illiterate, you cannot really read. So, what is moving you to tears? And then he said, although I'm illiterate and I cannot read a word of the Bhagavad Gita, I have attended some classes on the Bhagavad Gita. And I know the story of Bhagavad Gita. And as soon as I start thinking about Bhagavad Gita, I remember Krishna. And I remember how Krishna is sitting as the charioteer of Arjuna. And if I think about the Supreme Personality of Godhead taking the position of a charioteer for his devotee, taking a position of a menial servant for his devotee, I'm overwhelmed by the thinking of the love that Krishna has for his devotee. And then I start crying incessantly. So Lord Chaitanya was very impressed by this person. Gita reading is perfect. You have taken the so we can see, well, if Krishna, was a friend, then he couldn't have also be God. Instead of thinking about it that way, we can take the position that this illiterate Brahma had taken, and we can think that how wonderful it is. Krishna is God. He is the Supreme Person. But despite that, he still wants to have intimate exchanges with his devotees. And to have those intimate exchanges, he's willing to do any service and play any role just to facilitate the loving exchanges. That was what I wanted to share. I hope there was something that was inspiring and of value to you. It's wonderful to see so many of you online again. I'm very grateful for John Chakshus Prabhu for bringing all of these people from his, what I think is a wonderful and inspiring network of people. So I think we can hopefully move on to questions. If we have questions, comments, corrections. I would like to acknowledge some of the people that I remember. I remember Adam. I remember you from before. Nice seeing you again, Adam. I recognize you. And I think Samuel, I remember. I'm trying to go through some names, see I can find other people I remember. Agnes, I remember you as well. Sam, I remember Evelyn. I remember, let's see who else is here. David also remembered. Patricia. I remember Gayatri Devi Dasi. Thank you for joining. So if we have questions,
Okay.
comments.
Thank you, Mother, for a nice class. In the papers, Prabhupada mentioned about Krishna being benefactor of the devotee. In the Christian kingdom today, the churches, they always pray to God for problems. Give me this, give me good wife, give me money, give me jobs. So that means God, Jesus is like a benefactor, actually, in that sense. But what are the qualifications? At what time can God be our benefactor? At what period of our service to him can we call him or can we see him as our benefactor?
When can we see God as a benefactor?
Yes, because people who worship him today in Kali Yuga always go to God for some material need. And they don't even know the qualification before God can become their benefactor or their messenger.
Yes, so I think we have to acknowledge, if we go to God to ask him, for a good spouse, we ask them to heal our child, we ask him to help us in our business, we are still pious because we're acknowledging God is in control, and we're acknowledging that it's only through his blessing that we can actually attain anything. So in that sense, it is good. If you do that, you are a religious person. And it's actually said, if you do want something, the best way to get it is actually to ask God, to approach him. But we also understand that that is not the highest form of worship. And we can understand that, because if we just think about a relationship that we have with our parents, it would be respectable if you needed help and you approached your parent, your mother, your father, and you asked them, to help you. Maybe you wanted to buy your own house and you asked your parents, can you help me buy this house? Can you, maybe borrow me some money, or can you help me resolve this challenge I'm having? And our parent would say it's still good. They would appreciate that we're coming to them and we're honoring them as the superior. We're honoring as someone who's got more wisdom and ability to help us. But at the same time, if that was the only thing we were doing in that relationship, the relationship wouldn't be very deep. It would be more meaningful if we actually went to our parent and we said, like, you went through so much trouble to raise me. You've given me a home. You've given me an education. What can I do for you? What can I now, now that I'm an adult, how can I serve you? How can I make your life better? How can I be a good son to you? So in the same way, I think, for whatever purpose we approach God, he's going to be acknowledging the fact that we approach him, that we connect with him. But if we really want him to be our benefactor, we should trust that he knows what we really need more than we do. And when we go to him, we should first, if we pray, we should glorify him and thank him, for everything that he's giving to us. And the more we develop that mood of glorifying God and developing that trust that he knows what I need, he knows the desires in my heart, and he will provide for me. To the extent that we do that, to that extent, he more and more so becomes our benefactor, because it's that for us, if we go to God with so many desires, he might not give everything, because we can raise our hands. I don't know if any of you have had that experience, that you maybe desired something, but now if you think about it, that if you had gotten that, it would have been bad for you. Now imagine, like, everything you desired, everything, it just happened immediately. I think many of us can see that it could be harmful to us, it could be harmful to others. If everything we wanted, it was just given immediately, it would be chaos in the world. But for the pure devotee, someone that is loving God unconditionally. So that means that they're serving God just out of pure love, no motivation. They don't want anything. Whatever they desire, Krishna will give to them, because Krishna knows whatever they desire will be used for the greatest good. It will be used to serve God, and it will also be used to uplift others. So thank you for that question, Kush Prabhu. It was very deep, very
Thank you so
profound.
much.
I'm not sure I did it full justice, but
Thank you very much. Our next question is from Saradiya Prabhu, please.
oh, Sadev Prabhu, thanks for the question.
Hare Krishna. Well, again,
Hare
thank
Krishna
you,
Prabhu.
thank you for the class. It's beautiful. My question has to do with, I think it's a question one of the ladies on this transformation group asked you the last time you gave class here. And yesterday also, the lady who gave class on this platform in the purport of 1919, which is the previous verse to what you spoke on today. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada stated that Krishna sometimes causes tribulations to his devotees, and by so doing, increases the love of the devotees to God. And when you spoke the other time, this lady was asking, why is it that when one tries to serve God, that is actually the time he or she faces the most difficulties and problems? So my question is, Krishna wants us to come back to him. So why does he make life more difficult when we try turning towards him than when we were doing our own nonsense? Why would Krishna or why would God do that? Okay, Hare Krishna, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sadev Prabhu. It's a very important question, and I think it's a question that we struggle through with right throughout our lives, because it's something that we feel, we experience different types of hardships and challenges and heartbreak, even while we are trying very sincerely to come closer towards God, and that might create doubt and confusion for us. I would say, from my personal realization, is that we have a very important lesson to learn before we can return back to the spiritual world where we belong. And that lesson is that it's impossible for us to find lasting, fulfilling happiness here in the material world. It's impossible for us to be fully satisfied when we are in any way still disconnected from God. And most of us are not really convinced of that truth. And until we're not convinced that, like Prabhupada said, when someone asked him, what is humility? And he said, you have to be fully convinced that not your gun, not your family, not your education, not your wealth, not anything except the grace of Krishna can save you. So to go back to the spiritual world, we need to desire Krishna more than anything else. And we only desire that which we think or we are convinced of will make us happy. Like, no one desires anything which they think is going to bring them misery. Like, why do we desire a certain job, a certain car, a certain partner, a certain house? Because we think it's going to make us happy. So we will only desire Krishna and to be with Krishna very strongly, like stronger than anything else, if we are convinced that outside of Krishna's love, outside of our exchanges with Krishna, nothing else can really satisfy us and make us happy in the long term. Because things we experience here might make us happy in the short term. So I would say one of the reasons why we go through difficulties is because we still have faith. We have faith that a certain job is going to make us happy. A certain person is going to make us happy. A certain position is going to make us happy. You know, it's like we are in this world, and we should think about this world as I'm going to say a holiday resort, but that makes it sound too nice. We can think about this world as a place we're just staying overnight. You know, it's like an overnight stop. And what we've got to understand is, like, if you're going to stay somewhere overnight, then you're not going to try and, like, you know, spend a lot of money and effort to make everything exactly the way you want it, because you have to leave the next day. It doesn't make sense. Like, even if you got the perfect furniture, you know, the decor you always desired, you got, you know, the best food, you got everything in that, you know, accommodation, the overnight accommodation, perfect. The next morning you have to leave. And that is the situation in the material world. Even if you did arrange everything the way you wanted, everything, even if you got everything you desired, at the time of death, you have to leave it all behind. So when we suffer, when we go through difficulties, you know, in its various forms, when other people make us suffer, when the elements, like, you know, we've got like floods, like recently there was big flooding in Europe, then people suffered. Then you've got your own mind. You know, I'm sure many of us have got stress and anxiety. That's your own mind making you suffer. So one of the reasons I would say that we suffer is because Krishna has to teach us this lesson. There is no lasting happiness here. And until we really learn that lesson, we're going to keep on trying. And we're not going to desire strongly enough to go back to Krishna, because Krishna won't force us. The only way we're going to go back to Krishna and to the spiritual world, if that desire, like, it overpowers every other desire you have in your mind. Now we have to ask ourselves, I'm not there. I've got so many desires. Still, I want to still, like, pursue so many degrees, and I want to move to another country, and I still want the perfect partner, and I want to have cute children. And I'm thinking all of those things are going to make me happy. So if I'm not going to experience some suffering in my pursuit for education, in my pursuit for family life, my belief is still going to be in those things. My belief, my faith is not going to be in Krishna. So that, I would say, that is one of the reasons. So Krishna is basically just trying to convince us, this is an overnight accommodation. Stop investing. Stop investing in this and start investing and believing in your. So, okay, Esther is saying she's satisfied with the answer. Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Although it wasn't your question, I'm happy you're satisfied with the answer.
Thank you so much,
saying
Mother.
pursue God and not men.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Sam. Sam, please unmute.
Wonderful to see you again, Sam.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a nice presentation, and thank Jenna for letting us in on some of these presentations. It's always educative. I had two questions, but I think you answered the second part on your last part of your presentation. I was going to ask, when you say Krishna, which I understand it means God. Does it mean the God, the supreme God, or is a God? But then you answered that by saying that's the supreme God. The second part of the question is, these stories that you tell, are these physical stories that happen on earth, or these are metaphysical or spiritual stories?
Thank you so much, Sam. A very good question. So firstly, yes, when we say Krishna, it's we're referring to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but we would say that, you know, Krishna is one name, but there are many names that you could use for God, because God is unlimited. So in one sense, you can't, like, say he's only got one name, because then you've limited him. So Krishna describes one aspect of God, which means he's all attractive. He's that person that can attract everyone's mind and everyone's love. So it describes an aspect of God. So then your second question was about whether these stories where they, firstly, are they real, and then where are they happening? So what is interesting, I'm not sure when you were able to join the session today, but it's described that what Krishna likes to do, or God likes to do when he comes to earth, he's kind of like an actor on a stage. So if we think about a famous play, so we think about Romeo and Juliet. I'm sure you've got other famous plays in Ghana, but I'm thinking maybe everyone knows that play. So Romeo and Juliet, it's a story that was, written in the 17th century by William Shakespeare, but that story can be performed on different stages, different parts of the world, again and again and again. So in some ways, what Krishna does is, his stories are called Leela. So it's called pastime. So Krishna just does it because he enjoys it. Very much like, why do we have, a play? Because we enjoy it. The actors enjoy it, and the audience also enjoys it. So in the same way, Krishna enjoys acting out his Leela, his plays. So he comes, and certain of his plays are enacted, specifically on our earth. So the stories that we shared, it happened on earth. When Krishna was present, we would say, like, according to our scriptures, like, there was a specific time he was here, and he acted it out. But at the same time, those stories, because it is like Krishna's play, it could happen again somewhere else as well. I hope that makes sense. It's quite of an esoteric answer, but they do really take place.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's for a similar reason. Like, we like to watch plays, and when Krishna comes to earth and he acts out his Leela, then it also attracts us. Like, now we are sitting and we're listening, to the story. And it might attract our minds. It might increase our interest in Krishna. I hope, does that answer satisfy you, Sam?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for asking, and thank you for coming on camera. It looks like it's nice and sunny where you are.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining. It's dark outside where I am in South Africa.
I'm in Chicago, so.
Okay.
I think there's a question on the chat room. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
There's a question on the chat room from Maya Obon. He said, my question is that money is the essence in our world today. You need money to be able to feed, take care of yourself and family, even to help the needy and poor. You need money because of this. Our lives are full of running around for money. How do we reconcile working for money and at the same time focus on Krishna consciousness and not seem to engross in work and money, but be able to know, understand, and do what Krishna requires of us? Intelligent question.
Yes, thank you, Mary. It's a very good question. It's a very practical question, because as you pointed out, in today's society, we are very much seemingly depending on money, and you require money for meeting all of your needs and also the needs of your family. And you also made the point that you need money if you want to help others. So that is very true. So, and then you said that causes us to need to maybe work very long hours to get the money that we need. And then you said, like, how do we reconcile this? The need to work for so much money and then still focus on Krishna. So a couple of interesting points. I think the first thing that we need to understand is that sometimes we create this break. There's my material life, like I need to make money. And then there's my spiritual life, like I need to meditate, I need to worship Krishna, and I need to maybe study the scripture. So what we want to do is we want to bridge the divide and not think that there's two separate parts of our lives. We want to think that, no, I've got one life and every part of my life is connected to Krishna. And that requires just that we change the way we think. It doesn't necessarily require that we drastically change what we do. It might just require that we change our consciousness, and it might change how we do, what we need to do. So for instance, we need money to feed and take care of yourself and your family. So when it comes to taking care of yourself and your family, we can start thinking or meditating upon the fact that your family members are actually also Krishna's family members. So now in this lifetime, they've been given to you, and it's your responsibility to take care of them, but they are all spirit souls. And maybe they might not in this lifetime, maybe they are, knowing that they are servants of God, devotees of God, and they're living in that way. But even if they're not aware of that, that's still who they ultimately are. They are dear to Krishna. And because of that, we can think that every effort that I'm making to take care of my family, whether it's paying a bill, taking my child to school, cleaning the house, maintaining the garden, everything I do, I'm doing to take care of Krishna's family members, Krishna's spirit souls who are in my care. So that's one thing we can do. We can meditate upon even our house, how our house is a gift that Krishna is giving to us, but it's still his, it's coming from him. So even when we're just maintaining our house, we can meditate upon the fact that yes, actually this is Krishna's, and I'm taking care of it. So that is one, that is one thing that I think that we can do that can help us, have a change, like a shift in our mindset. And then another thing that we can do to help us to remain focused on Krishna is to, at the beginning of our day, have time where we just focus on connecting with Krishna. And then we have that space where before we start getting into, our work responsibilities, our family responsibilities, our social responsibilities, because we have all of those responsibilities, we remind ourselves that ultimately we are a spirit soul, everyone else is a spirit soul, and we pray that when we do this, all the responsibilities that we have, when we execute them, we do this, but we are conscious that ultimately we are doing this for Krishna. But it helps to have that time, because often if we get too busy, we get into a very passionate mode of thinking and acting. And we're just thinking, I need to do this, I need to do that, this is my children, this is my house. And then we forget, Krishna. And again, we create that split between my spiritual life and my material life. And we don't want that split. We want our whole life to be connected to Krishna. So I would say that is very important, taking out the time and meditating upon the fact, and then praying to Krishna that I have a lot to do today, but please help me to remember that whatever I'm doing, I can do it as a service for you. I can say, yeah, I'm doing this, but I'm doing it for you. I offer it back to you. And then last point that I'll make on that is that, yes, we do need money, but it's explained that ultimately the source of everything is Krishna. So God is giving us everything. Now he's giving us, for instance, money. He might send through our business, he might send it through our boss, he might send it through our family member, but ultimately he is the one that's maintaining us. He is the one that's providing for us. He is the source of everything. So although we must do our job, we must do our duty, we should never think that I'm depending on money. We should think that I'm depending on God. I'm depending on Krishna. And then that, again, it changes. That will help us not to overwork ourselves, but to just do what we know is our responsibility, and then have the faith that if we do our responsibility, Krishna will provide what we need. I hope that answers your question. Mary, you're saying thank you. So I hope you're satisfied. If you're not satisfied, please let us know. We can then.
Thank you, Mother, so much for this class. So detailed and deep questions and answers.
Yes.
No question on the chat room. Somebody said, may I say I'm very satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
So if anybody has any,
Last time we had too many questions. Now today people are quiet. So, oh, lovely seeing. And I'm seeing Roderick and Davy. Lovely seeing you on camera. Thank you for turning on your camera. I wasn't seeing her before. It's so lovely to see people. Nice seeing you, David, as well. It's nice seeing people, and then you're engaging with live.
Shakshu, do you have anything to say? Shakshu, kindly unmute yourself.
I was trying to watch one of your videos on Facebook the other day, but then you were speaking a few words of English and then you were speaking another language I couldn't follow, but it looked like a very good discussion. There were so many people watching. I really wanted to hear what you were saying.
Yes, I mean, I normally have the discussions in our local language, but only few videos that are fully, like completely English lessons. But many a times it's the local language that we communicate with. Yeah. So like I told Prabhu Kusha, we actually have a class, because of this class, I had to postpone it to an hour, later. So we will be going to start our class. Probably another time when you are here, we'll come early to listen to you. Thank you so much for the class. We are so grateful.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for bringing all the people from your very big and very inspiring network. I'm very, very grateful for your presence. And yeah, I did take note. Krish Prabhu did notify me that you actually have another session planned, and you'll be only here for the first hour. So thank you for staying so long. And I'm looking forward, hopefully, to connecting with everyone again in the future. Nice seeing you, Susie.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, brother. So another question is coming from Saradev Prabhu. Saradev, can please unmute yourself.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Well, thank you very much. Luckily for some of us, we oftentimes take it for granted, but it's not so easy to accept Krishna as the supreme absolute truth. Like the supreme God. But some of us, somehow we do. My question is, how do the general people understand and accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord when we look at some of Krishna's activities? They don't seem like God will be acting this way. Like people will oftentimes question, God is for peace. But in your Bible, in your Bhagavad Gita, God was actually inciting for war. So how do we help people understand that, well, it might appear this way, but it's the same Supreme Lord? How do we help people understand that? Hare Krishna.
Yes, sometimes we have this idea that that God needs to fit our limited understanding of what is good. So I think we have to begin by allowing our minds to become a little bit broader and to accept that if we want to believe God is the supreme being, and being part of being the supreme being is that he is like the supreme good, then whatever he does is going to be good in the ultimate sense. So I think we have to have, if we want to have this understanding of God, we have to have like a little bit of humility that some things that he might be doing, we might not understand exactly why it is good, but we have to have that faith that because he is God, it is good, and then we can make the effort to try and study more and find out more about his activities so we can understand why it's good. So if we take the example of the Battle of Kurukshetra, often people will pass their judgments like, how could Krishna support a war? It sounds like, she said violence. How could he support, violence being committed? But then if we have more knowledge of the situation, we know that Krishna didn't desire the war. Krishna and the Pandavas had made every possible effort to avoid the war. He actually, as we shared earlier in the class today, he personally went to the Kauravas and he tried to negotiate for peace. So it's not like Krishna is like this like power hungry person, like a warlord. we have all these stories these days. Like there's a story, I'm trying to think now, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. I didn't watch it, but I know about it. And there were all these different warlords, and in Africa we've also had definitely real life experiences of warlords, and they just, not necessarily just want to go to war, but because they want power, they want resources, they want land, they're willing to go to war for that reason. But that's not Krishna. But if we look at the situation, we see that there was a great injustice that had been done, and the Kauravas who were in charge of what we call Bharatvarsha, and that would be the whole world at that stage. The head person, Duryodhana, who was king, was very corrupt and evil. And we can understand, if we have, even just in a company, if we have, the CEO of the company and he is evil and he's corrupt, it's a very bad situation for everyone that works underneath him, even if he's a good, proficient manager, even if he's highly intelligent. We see how much damage such a person does. If we look at examples in world history, if we look at, for instance, Hitler, Hitler definitely had some level of intelligence. He was a charismatic leader, good speaker, etc. But we could say to some extent he was evil. And we see how much damage he did because he had a position of power. Now we have the same situation where Duryodhana, is king of the whole world, but he is a very corrupt and evil person. So we can understand that that situation would be extremely damaging. And Krishna agrees, or doesn't agree. Krishna supports the war in the end, because Duryodhana needs to be removed as the king of the world. So that would be for the ultimate good, because if we have corrupt leaders, everyone suffers. So I think that is one answer we could give to that question. I think there's many more. It's a very deep question, but is that we should, if we see Krishna does something or God does something, even in our own lives, we can bring it to our own lives. But sometimes we feel that Krishna or God has done something in our lives and we don't understand why it's happening. And then we might become very angry and resentful towards him and say, why? If you're God, if you're all powerful, if you love me, why are you, allowing this to happen? Why are you letting me go through this suffering? Because ultimately God is in control. Then we can take the same position. We can say, all right, I believe God is all good. I believe that, his only motive for doing anything is love, is to get me and others to connect with him. So let me meditate and let me pray to understand why this is happening. Let me understand the bigger picture. Let me understand his desire. And if we do that, I've definitely seen in my own life, and I've gone through some intense difficulties. If I take that humble position and I pray sincerely, Krishna, let me understand why this is happening. He's always revealed to me. And then I can see, although it might be difficult, although it might be painful, this was for my ultimate good. So everything Krishna does, the battle of Kurukshetra, it's for the ultimate good, if we have the eyes to see it. I hope that answers your question, Saradiya. It's a wonderful question, and we could have a whole discussion on it.
Thank you, Mother, for this wonderful class. So we let you take some rest, and we ask all devotees to unmute themselves, and let's chant Hare Krishna to Mother for coming. Please unmute your camera, in your mic. Chant for Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
We look forward to see all of you again next time. The speaks.
Bye.
Thank you so much for
Hare
joining.
Good night.
Lovely to be with all of you. Oh, now I see Mayor. Thank you for coming on camera, Mayor. Thank you. Susie, you've got a lovely smile. Rasa, I seeing you as well outside. Thank you.
Do like this. Hare Krishna. Say it, okay? Say it.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Prabhu, Hare Krishna, everyone. Does anyone still have question? Okay, somebody's here. Willie Wahab is here with question. Saradiya, you want to pick the question? Where are you? Ask to unmute. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, is the question in the chat?
No, somebody raised hands. Willie Wahab.
Okay, so please feel free
Willie,
to ask
oh,
your
okay, he
question.
doesn't have a mic. I think he was trying to request for his mic to be muted. He doesn't know how to open his mic. So my own question, I have one small question for you. If you will take it,
Okay.
that would be
See
good.
Willie. Okay, he's trying to connect. Oh, there we see Willie. We're seeing you. Nice.
Oh,
I think it's just taking some time to connect.
all right.
If anyone else has a question, you can also, in the meantime, type it in the chat, or you could raise your hand.
Okay.
I think he's ready now. We can see him.
Yeah, we can see him, but his mic is not on yet.
Let's give him some time.
So my question myself is on this well-wisher of Krishna, God, who is the well-wisher of all living entities. So when we suffer, is it also the well-wishing that God is giving us? Or only when we enjoy, when we have something good in our life?
Thank you so much, Kush Prabhu. Very deep question, and I think a very important one. And the question is, if we are going through difficulty in life, is that also a blessing of God? Or is it only a blessing when we receive something that we perceive, as enjoyable? And I would say it requires faith and trust in God to believe and experience that everything that happens to us is actually Him helping us. So it's explained that usually when we go through life, we experience, and I think we've all experienced this, we go through periods where things are difficult, even in a day, and then we go through periods where we find that because we've got karma, and for our past actions, we get reactions. So we have got good karma, so means we're going to experience pleasant things, like we might experience money just comes to us, and then we have some bad karma, as we might be experiencing a disease. And usually that is just happening according to our actions. And we see this in the world, as well. Whenever we do anything, there needs to be a reaction, for it. But it's explained that a person that tries to dedicate their life to God, a devotee, their life becomes slightly different because Krishna becomes personally involved with them. Because Krishna, when he sees that you are making this effort to come closer to him, then he also makes more of an effort to bring you closer to him. So then he gets personally involved with your life. And in your karma, you can think about your life as it's this book that was already written when you were born. You're born and there's this book, and it describes your destiny, and it describes all the suffering and all the joys you would have experienced. And within this book, you've got some opportunity to change the story slightly, but the main storyline is already set. But then when you turn towards God, then what he does is he starts rewriting that story, your life story. He starts rewriting it in his own personal handwriting. He starts writing the story so that the end of the story is that you reunite with him. So now you can think, if you had one story and the end of the story was probably not that you wanted to reunite with God. So many things would have happened in your life, and it would have sent you in certain directions and taken you to certain places. But now God gets involved with your story because you have expressed a desire to connect with him, and now he starts to become directly involved in everything that happens in your life. And if we have that faith that God is in this moment, He is, to the degree that I'm wanting to come to Him, He is rewriting the story of my life, then we also have to have the faith that whether it is a difficulty or whether it is a joy, whether we are suffering or whether we're experiencing great happiness, it is all part of God's master plan, His master story for us as an individual to come back to Him. So we can also think about it this way, that we can think about the analogy of we're like a child, and we need to both learn lessons to become an adult, and we also need to grow. And if you're a child and you need to learn lessons and you need to grow, there's certain things that you do which are very enjoyable. Like as a child, you can eat a lot and you need to eat because you need to grow. So that's something enjoyable. But then you also need to go to school. And that is not so enjoyable. I didn't like attending school and needing to sit down and listen to my teachers. But whether you're eating or whether you're going to school and having a lesson, all of that is helping you becoming a mature, adult. So in the same way, when we go through life, whether we're going through suffering or whether we are going through periods of happiness, we can have the trust that it's all going to help me become spiritually mature. And spiritually mature means we'll be ready to return to God. So I think it's nice. Meditate upon how God is writing your life story, so that the end of the story is you reunite with God in unconditional love. Thank you so much for that question, Kusha Prabhu.
Thank you, Mother. We have a question now from your friend, Dr. George.
Dr. George is back.
George, please unmute your mic, please.
Yeah, Kusha Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Thank
you for your nice kirtan over there. I like your kirtan. I'm really enjoying it. So, Mother Hare Krishna. Please permit me to ask. Kusha Prabhu, I don't know if you are still online, no?
Yes, you are still online, yes.
Okay, but okay. This was the last Sunday, Srivas Vanachari Prabhu gave a class. So it generated a lot of questions, but time didn't permit us to ask more questions. So since you are here, I would like to ask you. Actually, it's about the incarnation of Lord Ram. Mm-hmm. He made mention that when Lord Ramachandra appeared in this material world, his principle is one man, one wife. Mm-hmm. Okay. And actually, all over the whole world now, I think the women population is twice that of the men. Mm-hmm. So, and by satrial law, when a woman approaches you, you are supposed not to reject that woman. But Lord Ramachandra rejected. There is a woman that he mentioned, but I forget the name of that woman. Mm-hmm. So now my question is, now that the world is overpopulated in terms of women, and we are supposed to marry one man, it's supposed to be one man, one woman. The other women who will not get a man to marry, mm-hmm. What would they do? This is what I'm supposed to ask him, but time didn't permit me. So, Mother, since you are here and you are a woman as well, I would like you to give me an answer. Hare Krishna, Mother.
Thank you very much for the question, George. I really appreciate your question. Again, a very practical question, because as you have rightly observed, at least in certain countries, there's definitely more women than men. I think I'm from South Africa, and it's the same here. We definitely have always, the population of women is greater than men. There are some countries in the world where it's different, like India. There are currently in younger generations of men, like men between 20 and 35, there's many more men than women. So that the opposite also happens in some places in the world. But in general, you are right. We often see that it's interesting, there are more baby boys born, but by the time, like a generation is 18 years old, there is more, there's always more girls that survive, and then men die, they die earlier, and they also die more in wars, etc., etc. So there is this imbalance. And you're very accurate in saying that in like ancient like cultures, and also in the ancient like Vedic culture, one of the solutions that was given for that problem is that one man could marry more than one woman. But it was like there was like with certain we could say like rules or principles. So it's not like any man could just marry as much women as he liked. It would be that you could marry more than one woman, but you would have to be able to take care of the woman. So that is also very important. So if we say you have to be able to take care of the women, it means you have to be able to take care of them, both taking care of their material needs, making sure they've got enough space to live. And you also need to be able to take care of them emotionally. So giving them enough time, giving enough support, giving them enough love. And we can see that, it's not always possible for each person to have, for all men to have that capacity. Also how to know how to deal with more than one woman, in a kind of extended family arrangement. It can be quite challenging. So it is interesting that Prabhupada, the teacher of Vaishnavism or the Hare Krishna movement, he wasn't against that arrangement of polygamy, in general, because it is a practical solution. Also we see, because I am from South Africa, and here it's legal. So our previous president, he had a couple of wives. And I've also, I've seen in many societies, it's not always a bad thing for the woman, because it means, if there's one competent man and he's got a couple of wives, then they also help each other. They, they support each other when it comes to like raising the children and looking after the family arrangements. And they also offer each other friendship and support if it's working well. That needs to be said. But Prabhupada said that when he came to the Western world, he saw that it wasn't the norm. Like when he went to America, for instance, and there wasn't polygamy. It's like there it was against the law. So he thought that in that particular culture, if he then bought a religion and then he said that, in this religion, the men can have multiple wives, because it's not the culture, he thought that people will often, they can very easily abuse that situation, and you would just attract men that just want to have multiple wives because they think that could be a good experience for them. They're not necessarily thinking, I want to take care of these wives. And it would be a problem if you have a religion and you encourage people to do something like have multiple wives, and it's against the law in the country. So I think that is one of the reasons why Prabhupada didn't make it like the norm in ISKCON. But I think, if you're living in a country like South Africa or other African countries, other Middle Eastern countries, and it's part of the culture already, and also people understand how to make it work. Because if you were born in a family and your father had several wives, and you grew up and you had several mothers, you know how that family works. You understand it. You grew up. You understand how those relationships work. It makes sense to you. So I think if you're born in such a country, it's not a problem if you want to be a devotee, and you also have that family arrangement, because it's just a family arrangement. So then it's all right. But I think it is going to be a problem, say we go to Germany, and in Germany there's probably more women than men. That's, I'm pretty sure about that. Kusha Prabhu could confirm, but probably say Germany, there's more women than men. But if you now go to Germany and you tell the people like, okay, you can become Hare Krishna devotees, and then one thing that we allow you to do is that the men can have multiple wives, it will create a lot of problems, because the German people haven't lived that way. It also would be against their law. So people would not know, how to make it work well for them. Most people these days, You can tell me if I'm wrong, but most people these days, they struggle to make a relationship work with one partner. Now imagine you have to make a relationship work with 5 partners. And those 5 partners also have to, they also have to make the relationship work with each other. So it's quite difficult. So, I mean, that is like from the practical point of view. So it's not that we are, I mean, like Prabhupada, he wasn't against polygamy, but you've got to understand like where, for which group of people and in which culture will it help the people to have good relationships so that they can have, a good spiritual life, and in which situation and culture it will create problems, more problems. And then if there's more problems in the relationships, it's going to influence your spiritual life in a bad way. Definitely. It's undeniable. So that is, I mean, that's just like our current situation. It's like, we're not against polygamy, but we have to ask ourselves, is this really going to be a good solution in this particular place? And then with regards to Lord Ramachandra, it's interesting. He was like, each avatar of Krishna comes for a specific purpose and to teach specific things. And it's interesting, Lord Ramachandra, he's part of what he's teaching like the perfect example. So it said he was the perfect king, the perfect son, and the perfect husband. Now, if you ask any woman, you can have the option between you have your husband all to yourself, is only yours exclusively, or you have to share him, with a couple of co-wives. There's no woman that's going to say, I will, my first option is to share my husband, From the wife's point of view, you have the man all to yourself. They say that's very much a woman's psychology. It's like, I want everything from one man, everything. A man thinks, I want a little bit from many women. That seems good to a man. That's what they say. That's what psychologists say. In general, they say. Women think the perfect relationship is one man gives me everything. He fulfills every one of my desires. And a man thinks the perfect relationships is there's several beautiful women in my life and, they fulfill my desires. So from the woman's point of view, so Ramachandra's wife, his consort was Sita Devi. So from her point of view, the perfect husband would only have one wife. She wouldn't have to share him. So you can understand. So for that reason, if you ask women, describe the perfect husband, one of the things she'll say is he's only mine. And I mean, as we said, like culturally, if that's the way you're trained, you would grudgingly accept that you have to share your husband, but it's never your first choice. And then we see, even if you are sharing your husband, the women always want to be the I don't know, there's different terms for it in different cultures where they have polygamy, but they'll say, well, I want to be like the first wife, or I want to be the favorite wife. I want to be the principal wife. I know you're in South Africa, a Zulu king, he also has several wives, but then there's like a principal wife, or there's like, the first 3 wives. And they have a superior position. So I hope that answers your question, but it's a very fascinating topic, Dr. George.
Yeah, actually, mother, yeah, a lot of questions still, but I don't know if time will permit. And
I think I will have to add some few things in this George question.
Platform will be able to permit me also.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Pardon me.
I think I have to add some few things as regards to the men getting married.
Okay.
In Vedic culture, there's what is called the ashram, brahmacharya ashram.
Yes.
So a son at the age of 5 years will live with the spiritual master in the ashram and be trained how to respect women, how to worship women, how to provide for a woman. You don't just grow up as a human being and get married. You get trained in celibacy, control your senses, know what is called responsibility before you get married at the age of 25, not before. So today there's no training before men get married. Reason there are so many divorces. You don't see the women as their wife or as their mother or as their sister or as their daughter. They see them as an object because no single training. So That is the reason why they are not getting married, or there's so many divorce, and there's so many women than men. Men themselves, first, you have to be qualified before you talk about getting married. Now, people get married without even having a job. So how do you feed? So in the ashram, you learn all these things. You have to be responsible on yourself first before you can be responsible for another living entity. And when you get married, you have a child. The responsibilities multiplies. So where there's no school of thoughts to teach all these things, why will you entangle yourself in a mess? People are committing suicide because they can't even feed themselves. Economic disaster globally. So when men really want to think of getting married, first of all, ask yourself, can I feed myself? It's called a household life. Household means somebody who owns a house. Do you have a house? Are you on rent? You are paying rent, somebody's paying rent, for example. You go and get married. What happens if the landlord kick you out tomorrow? Where will you go to with your wife and children? The ideal husband is one who owns a house, who is working, have a means of earning a living. Then you see that will automatically reduce the rate of divorce in the world. Most of the divorce is as a result of not being able to provide for the family. And you see today in Kali Yuga, many women are working. Most families are maintained by women, and demoniac men take advantage of them and exploit them because of they have to feed the family. So to avoid that, you, the man, have to be responsible 100%. Understand this, George?
Yeah. Sure.
So do not worry about the number of women in the world is more than men. The problem is men should go to the spiritual ashram of the guru and be trained spiritually, what it entails to be a married man. Then you are of age. It's like you're going to war, you go with your weapons of war, or you're going to farm, you go with your cutlass, with your farming tools to work. If you're going to get into married life, because you have to go with your tools, house, cows, businesses, income, clothes, jewelry. Women love jewelry. Can you afford it? You go to occasion, she saw her friend with jewelry, she don't have any. She feel, is my life different from all of these other women? Then she became unfaithful, and you complain, why is she unfaithful? Most of these are cases of a man not being able to provide. So our problem is not about too many women in the world. Our problem is how do we train the men, the young boys, to know how to be a good and ideal husband. Because any child you have, the way you treat your wife is how your son will see you and treat his own wife also. And your daughter will see how you train her mother. She will grow up and not even think about getting married because men abuse women. That's what she sees from the husband. So the main essence, concern should be, how do we save the world by saving the youth, the boys? Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, when you don't protect a woman, that gives Fana Samskara, undesirable children. How do you come? Because a man are not able to give them protection. Protection is not only when you go to war and kill people. It's about providing food, clothing, jewelry, going on holidays. She knows she can count on, my man is there, my husband is there. In the Vedic culture, a woman is not really meant to work. They take care of the house, they help you in your spiritual life. But today, they are all working. Nobody is talking about spiritual life or telling the children. So your concern is valid, but I will say that should not disturb you. What should disturb you is how do we produce men that will marry all these girls and stay faithful and train them also in devotional service.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. So my follow-up question, if time can permit me.
Yeah, go on, please.
Okay, I know of a mother Kunti becoming a widow at a very early age. So I would like to know, you see, all over the world, I've not been to other parts of the world, but Ghana, to be precise, where I'm living, men are dying more than the women. So I would like to know what accounts for this obsession.
Men are dying?
Yeah, more than the women.
Do you know
And
why?
no, I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Same question
Or
I already
is
answered
it?
you. When you get married without being responsible, no source of income, you die early. The early way to grave is to get married when you have no source of income. You go to sleep, you are thinking. You are walking on the street, you are thinking. You have blood pressure, you are stressful. You die, you just commit personal suicide. So that shouldn't be your problem, George.
Okay, Krishna.
Saradiya, you want to say something about that? Saradiya?
Yes.
You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can try comment on that. It's an interesting phenomenon, George, that you're right. Not only in Ghana, but in general over the world, men die earlier than women. Women tend to outlive men. And one of the things that was found why, women outlive men is it seems that women are more inclined to live religious lives, and men are more inclined to do, engage in very risky activity. So men often, if you look at their lifestyle, you've got more men that, for instance, become alcoholics than you've got women. You've got more men doing things like joining gangs than women. You've got more men, engaging in all forms of violence than women. So you can see, and it's interesting. You can see that the more you're not aligning your life with like religious principles, with spiritual principles, the more you're shortening your lifespan. So that is quite it's an interesting observation, but it comes back to a point that Kusha Prabhu was making earlier, and that is that it's so important for us to educate young people, and especially to educate young boys on what it means to be, just what it means to be a man, and what it means to take responsibility for others. Because that's, if you're a man, that's the core thing that you need to do, is that you need to, the Bible says that the man is the head of the household, but that means that being the head means that you have to take care of others. You have to be an example for others. You have to be able to protect others. So that, it takes a lot of training to help boys understand what that means, and also to become that men. So, I mean, that we really need to do. There's like a crisis in the world where there isn't good fathers, there isn't good role models, and boys are very much neglected. They don't get, enough, personal, training, and they don't get enough, I would say, inputs, in their lives. So that's very much needed. And then also, men need to be educated in spiritual life, and they need to become like, righteous, virtuous men. And then we'll see a big change in society, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. Like
Okay, mother.
we could solve a lot of social issues, if we could have like real proper men. We're sure you can be such a man, George, and you can help other young men to become that. So I'm not
okay.
I'm not sure we have any more questions or comments. I'm just saying, Joseph said he's enjoying the teaching. Thank you, Joseph. Please feel free to make a further comment or question. Otherwise, I don't know, George, if you had any more comments or questions you wanted to share. I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. Or
Okay, mother. Okay, still, then I would like to know, you see, at what point it looks like the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said that it sent forth men and demigods, that by cooperation we will live a happy life in this material world.
Mhm.
But that wasn't the case in this age of Kali Yuga. So I would like to know that we individual jivas can change the intentions of God. Can we do that? Is it possible? Can we change the intentions of God?
It's a very deep question, George. Can we change the intention of God? And then you mentioned that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that when there's cooperation between the men and the demigods, then there's prosperity.
Yeah.
And when there isn't, then we have, you know, a lot of calamity. And you said that that's what we're seeing right now.
Sure.
So maybe let's first discuss the first part of your question. Very fascinating question, this idea that we need to cooperate with the demigods. So maybe I'm not sure about like traditional religion or culture in Ghana, but we saw this all over the world, that I would say, like, before there was big industrialization and, you know, people were living in cities and working in factories, when people were more living in villages or cities that were more connected with nature, at least, people were often conscious that nature, you know, isn't dead. Most cultures believe that there's a river, but there's something like a river spirit, or there's the spirit of the forest, or the spirit of the trees, or the land, you know, or the mountain. So that was quite a common understanding in many cultures. And I'm not sure about Ghana because I don't know enough about the culture, but I know some African cultures that's definitely the case. And that idea is the same as that we have in Vedic culture. We just call them demigods. So behind the sun, there is a spirit, there's a personality. Behind the moon, there's a personality. So you see that the whole world then, and the whole of nature, it's not just dead. It's not just there for us to do whatever we like to do with it, but there's personalities. And therefore, for instance, when we want to build a house and we're going to cut off the trees and we're going to dig in the earth, we don't just do it without, you know, any regard for, you know, the sacredness of the earth. But in Vedic culture, you would go and you would first say some prayers to the earth, you would say some prayers to the forest, and you would only take what you need. You won't just like destroy everything. So you can see in the way we are dealing with the world now, you can see that it's not that we're not sitting down and not doing, like, you know, specific rituals or worship to the demigods. People are not doing that, but also the way we are engaging with nature is we just destroy. You know, we just, you know, so much toxin and pollution into the ocean without, you know, thinking about what we're doing. We, like, you know, burn, you know, thousands and thousands of hectares of rainforest so we can plant soya, so we can feed, you know, animals so we can eat them. So you can see in the way we're dealing with the world, it's very disrespectful. And we are seeing that the way we're dealing with the world is causing, for instance, global warming. And that is causing things like the floods that recently happened in Europe, and, you know, droughts that we get in other places in the world. And the droughts then cause big forest fires like we had in Australia last year, very big forest fires. And it caused very serious problems, and that was related to droughts, which is caused by this global warming. So as you said, you know, we can see how when we're not respectful to the demigods or respectful to nature, when we're not conscious, then, you know, we just won't be prosperous. But if we are, you know, we can prosper. So about changing the intentions of God. So God's intentions are always good. Oh, Krishna, start video. God's intentions are always good. You know, he's always wanting us to go back to him. He's always wanting to help us. Like someone has a...
It's okay, I muted him.
Okay, thank you. They're back on. So can we change God's intentions?
Intentions, yeah.
I don't think we can change God's intentions, but what we can do is we can change how God is going to express his intention. My video is stopped again. Let me just see if I can fix that. Not sure why my video is off. Not sure what's happening with my video, but anyway. Okay, so God's intention is always pure and it's always good. And his primary intention is he wants to reconnect with us and he wants to have a loving relationship with us. Now, how God's going to express that intention is going to depend on how we behave. So it's explained, Krishna says, you know, in the Bhagavad Gita, for the atheists, he comes as death. You know, he comes as death because they don't believe in him. So they're saying God does not exist. You're non-existent. So then he shows up in their life as non-existence, death. Your existence becomes nothing. You know, you die. So, you know, we can see that God is responding to us the whole time. But for the devotee, you know, they experience God as their best friend. So God's intention is the same. It's even, we find with Krishna's pastimes, it's very interesting what Krishna does. We've got demons that come and they harass Krishna's devotees and they harass Krishna. And then what does Krishna do? He kills them. Sounds quite brutal that he kills them. But then they get liberation. But why does he kill them? He kills them because they came and they were attacking, you know, innocent devotees. They were even attacking him. So then his intention is the same. He wants to help them. But to help, you know, a demon that is attacking innocent people and causing harm, the best thing is to kill him and then give him liberation. But for the devotee in the same situation, what does Krishna do? The innocent devotee that's being attacked by a demon or going through some suffering, Krishna comes and he saves him. So I'll tell a very short story. We've got a story of an elephant, Gajendra, who was the king of the elephants. And he one day, he was like playing in the water as elephants often do. And I think you'd appreciate the story because in Africa, there's definitely elephants and there's crocodiles. So he was playing in a river and he didn't know there was crocodiles. And a crocodile came and he actually bit him on his leg. And you know, crocodiles, you know, because you're from Africa, you know, crocodiles are vicious, dangerous creatures. So this crocodile bit Gajendra on his leg. And for a long time, he was struggling with this crocodile. But it's explained, although Gajendra was stronger than the crocodile, because he was in the water, he became weak after some time because he's out of his element. But it's a fascinating story because Gajendra wasn't an ordinary elephant. He was an elephant that had at some point in a previous lifetime, he had been a devotee, worshipped Krishna. So at some point, Gajendra realized, like, I cannot win this fight. You know, this fight, the crocodile was called Makendra. He realized that this crocodile is gonna destroy me. You know, he's gonna kill me. It's hopeless. And at that point, he remembered God and remembered Krishna and he remembered his prayers to Krishna. And then he started praying to Krishna, you know, and he prayed to Krishna to save him. And immediately Krishna appeared. He appeared and then Gajendra was so overwhelmed that Krishna came for him. He was looking around and he saw there was like a flower growing in the river and he plucked the flower and he offered it to Krishna. And what did Krishna do? He killed the crocodile, killed Makendra the crocodile, and the crocodile, the soul that was there, he got liberated and he saved Gajendra. And he gave Gajendra blessings. So you see, it's interesting. The intention of Krishna is the same. He wants to, he's going to both help Gajendra and he's going to help the crocodile. But because Gajendra is praying to him, he comes, he saves him and he gives him a blessing. But because the crocodile Makendra is just attacking, you know, his devotee, he kills him. So I hope that answers your question. It's a very deep question.
Mother, yeah. Well, I really appreciate your answer also.
Thank you, Mother. We take last question from Sahadev Prabhu.
Okay.
So we call it a day, 2 hours. Sahadev, please unmute.
Well, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mother Saradiya, for still hanging around to take our questions. I don't have a question per se. I just wanted to say, Kusha Prabhu, thank you for the education, because that is what we're lacking in this world. If we do not know, it's just like in Africa, we have everything we need as a continent, as a nation, but because we do not know how to use them, we're still poor. You know? So if we do not know how to govern ourselves, if we do not know how to live as matured husbands, then when we go into marriage, we're going to create more problems. So thanks for the education. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. We have a question from Joseph Ado. Joseph, please unmute yourself. Where are you? Let me see. Joseph, unmute yourself now, please. If you are still here.
I'm not sure Joseph is still here. He might have
Okay, there you are. You are back, Saradiya. That's good.
lost Joseph. Oh, I see Joseph. Yeah, I see Joseph. Maybe he just needs a bit of time.
Maybe he left.
No, I see him. I see Joseph is there.
Okay, yeah, he's there. He's there. I saw him now. Let me send him icon to unmute. Joseph, check on your screen and press on unmute.
There's two Josephs. There's Joseph.
Joseph Arthur and Joseph Osei too.
Yeah,
Yes.
both of them are there.
So I think it's Joseph Ada that had the question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe it's not on seats.
We're waiting in
Oh.
great
Maybe it's
anticipation.
away.
So the other Joseph says he doesn't have a question. Yes, Joseph.
Yeah.
Looking for the other Joseph.
Okay.
Maybe the other Joseph step away. Okay, so we call it a day for today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank everybody for coming for today's class. And
Anyway, Kusha Prabhu, how can I get your kittens? I'm really enjoying it.
when you become a pure devotee, you will get the kitten.
Hey, not
That'd be so
not in
cool.
this lifetime. Not in this lifetime.
Okay, when you get initiation, you get the kitten.
Oh, okay.
At least it should motivate you to get initiation.
Okay. Actually, it looks so sweet in the saffron. Oh, Hare Krishna.
Okay, so we call it a
Okay.
day and we go back to our, what do you call it? I'm coming. What is it?
Thank you so much for inviting me again to speak. I'm very grateful for being of Hare Krishna Africa. I really love this community and I hope we can spend some more time together again in the future. So thank you for everyone, your time and your presence and your beautiful questions. And maybe Joseph comes back later. Joseph has a wonderful name.